everybody, and welcome to the iRock Knits podcast. This is episode 70, and it is 1 week before Easter. So happy Easter week to all those who celebrate that holiday. I have new eyeglasses. They are hot pink and orange. So we're going to call them raspberry. I'm not sure I love them. I loved my old ones. These are really fun, pops of color, but I'm not sure I want to wear them every day. And so I did order them knowing that I probably would be getting a backup pair. But these might be my for fun glasses, and then I might get a pair that has a different shape or look. These are a little rounder. They're a little brighter on my face, which I'm turning 60 this month. Do you think we should have a birthday party? I was thinking maybe we should have a Zoom for my birthday. I could eat cake, or you guys could smash cake in my face, or you could all raise a toast of Diet Coke. I don't know. But yeah, I'm going to be 60. I'm going to have my second quarantine birthday this month. So I don't know. I just kind of went with the bright and colorful. It's got kind of a nice little side feature here. So don't let me know what you think, because it doesn't matter, right? I bought them. I have to keep them. I did have help from the guy in the store and my daughter, who both agreed that this was the best pair that I tried on. I tried on some really funky ones. White and black, little circles with orange side pieces, and so I did quite a few. I tried on purple and blue and lime green. So I did not try on anything that didn't have some color in it, and probably suits my personality. They're a little loose. They do fall down on my nose. We went to pick them up on Friday. They called, and so I called my daughter, because she lives over on Grand Avenue in St. Paul. If you're familiar with the area at all, that's where I got these. And so I went over and we went to Cafe Latte for lunch. And as soon as we walked, next door, the glasses were down on my nose. And I said, well, good, we'll go to lunch, then I'll go back and have her adjust them. And we went back and she adjusted them again. And then we decided to take a walk, which I have to tell you about what happened with that. But we decided to go for a walk, and they fell down on my nose again. So we went back in, and every time I went back in, she said, oh no, oh dear. And I said, they're just too loose. I said, I don't know if I wear my glasses really tight, but they're just too loose. So she adjusted them again, and they're much better. They do stay up, but eventually they slip forward just a hair. And I'll show you. See, they can go just that little bit, and that's not where I want to wear them. So you know how you have to kind of get used to a new prescription too. Like, hopefully I'm not going to be doing this all the time. So in my close-up range, I have a bifocal transitions. As you get older, right? Just all the body parts have to just keep getting tweaked. My dad said, you just go to the junkyard and pick out a new part, Corey. That's what we do for your mother. Just so true, right? But I did actually get an injection in my foot last week. So Wednesday, I went and had an MRI in the morning, and then waited an hour because that's how long it took for them to read it. And then I went right upstairs and saw my foot doctor. And the diagnosis is that I have some inflammation in the tendon, but I have significant arthritis in the joint in front of the foot. Not the ankle bone, but the right in front of it. Now, I'm not a medical person at all, but your foot is full of bones, right? And he said the people will come in with this pain and call it their ankle, but it's really not their ankle, it's in front. And I would say mine hurts in front of my ankle on the top, and significantly, right? We talked about that. So he said, I think The only recommendation I can give you right now would be to either rest and go to physical therapy or get an injection. I said, let's do it. I've been laid up now for 4 months and with my hands since September. I need to be able to get out and walk and move, and spring is coming. So I said, let's do it. Let's do it right now. And he is already running behind. I had been waiting, and he didn't even wait for the nurse. He went out, got his own tray, brought it in, felt around, pushed and poked, and found the right spot, and I got some relief. Knock on wood, right? I had it on Wednesday. 2 to 3 days you can have some significant side effects from that, right? So I haven't slept, very tired. If I yawn today, I'll try to edit it out. I'm a little sleep deprived because I get a little wired. My cheeks get a little flush, and I don't sleep well. So even taking a melatonin as a supplement, which we do at our house occasionally, when you haven't slept for a night or two and you just need to go to sleep. And so I'm just been a little groggy and sleepy. But I would say that the only thing I'm feeling in my foot right now is where the surgical site was, which I was not feeling at all before because I was only feeling this top of my foot pain. And now I just have like tenderness, right? Like now I wouldn't even call it pain. I said to Ross yesterday, I walked on Friday with Kylie. We did about 4 blocks and, bigger blocks, but we didn't go very far, and we kept turning back toward my car so that in case it got to be too much. And then it rained all day yesterday, so I didn't walk. I could have gone downstairs. We have a treadmill, but I don't want to push it either at first. I kind of want to take it slow. So I'm hoping to get outside today and see how it does. But knock on wood, Friday night, my foot was maybe a 1, maybe a 2 at the most, right? Like it hurt more, but more like I just have a stone in my shoe, like just an aggravation, not the pain I was having before. I have not had the need to ice. So I'm really hoping. I know the cortisone is not good for you. I know it will deteriorate the joint over time, but honestly, I've had it so long. I've had it, shoulder a number of times, hands many times, knee. I had it in my other foot years and years ago. My back. I think it's the only thing that's going to keep me going, and I do not want to become a bump on the log. So thank you for all of your kind words and thoughts about my foot and what I've been going through. I'm going to show on the next podcast because I'll finish it, but I am knitting a project that has twisted cables in it, and it's just a small item, and my thumb is sore from twisting those stitches every time and trying to get in to do the stitch, and I'm kind of manipulating a lot because it's a tight gauge, and so I am feeling that a little bit, but not significant. So and this hand never hurts, and it's 3 months ahead of this one. So maybe you guys, I'm gonna have all body parts working at one time at the same time, except for the shoulder, which I'm finding out what I can do and cannot do with this right shoulder. I reached up to get a shirt down last night in the closet, and I've only been using my left hand, and I just reached right up and whoo, that caught, and I said, oh, Ross, now I can't use my right arm. So I engaged it last night. It really hurt, but up until yesterday, it had been manageable, right? Like, just don't use it to carry your purse. Don't use it to lift anything down. Don't try to, slide something over or get the pot off the stove with just your right hand. Use them both, right? So I'm hoping that everything will be good. Anyway, there you go. Your 5-minute CORI'S health journey. What am I wearing today? This is my Velynda cardigan. I do believe I've worn this on the podcast before. I know when Amber and I recorded in Virginia Beach, I had just finished this. That's why it sticks in my mind, because it was a knit along for the Virginia Beach yarn getaway a couple of years ago. This is a pattern by Bon Marie Burns, and we did this knit along. I know, Angela, you also knitted one for that event. It is an $8 pattern on Ravelry. It's knit in worsted weight, 20 stitches to 4 inches. It combines low bulk cabling with a beautifully shaped fit to create a modern classic you'll reach for over and over. Velynda is knit in one piece from the bottom up, And the sleeves are knit in the round top down. I did not do the waist shaping. I never do, because in the later half of my life I have not had much of a waist. So I really enjoyed it. My neck was large, so and I do think I talked about this when I did it with Amber, is that the neckline is knit 2, purl 2, but I picked up extra stitches, and in the first round did knit 3, purl 2, and then decreased knit 2 together over the shoulder hump on both sides to get down. So I picked up, and then after that to bring it in a little bit, because it was just a little bit wider than I would have liked. And that happens sometimes when you size up in garments. You make, a size bigger, that neck hole can also get a little bit bigger than you might want, depending on your bust and things. I used Haiku yarn by Candee, and this is like the boysenberry colorway, I think. So really bright, nice yarn, a little rustic, right? It has some itch factor to it. Like, no, it's not itchy, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's rustic. It just has a rustic feel. It's not merino. It's not soft. It's not like, oh, this is so soft. It's not like that. But I do think that those hold up better over time. They don't pill. They just, look at me try to hold up my, my right wrist for all of you. I'll just hold up my left arm. So, I've worn it quite a bit. It doesn't pill. Just a really fun sweater. I have audiobooks this week. I have been listening to audiobooks recently. I just can't find something to settle on TV in the evenings. And the books have been so good that I've just been leaving the TV off and listening while I knit. But the first one I read was for book club at the beginning of the month. And we read The Night Watchman by Louise Erdrich. And she is a Minnesota author, North Dakota author who owns a bookstore in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, in the Minneapolis area. Very popular, had books up for the Pulitzer Prize, I believe. We read Butcher Shop Singing Club, something, back in the day, and then we read this one. I'm really, really glad I read it. Okay? I didn't love it while I was reading it, but it propelled me forward. But this is a book about Native Americans and their plight and what we have done to them, and I get sad about that, right? That kind of thing happens to me. I think we've talked about that before, that I can kind of take on a character or a book and it can make me sad. So I'm just going to read you a little bit of a description. Thomas is the night watchman at the jewel-bearing plant, the first factory located near the Turtle Mountain Reservation in rural North Dakota. He is also a Chippewa council member who is trying to understand the consequences of the new emancipation bill on its way to the floor of the United States Congress. It is 1953, and he and the other council members know the bill isn't about freedom. Congress is fed up with Indians. The bill is a termination that threatens the rights of Native Americans to their land and their very identity. How can the government abandon treaties made in good faith with Native Americans for as long as the grasses shall grow and the rivers run? And since graduating high school, Pixie Parenteau has insisted that everyone call her Patrice. Unlike most of the girls on the reservation, Patrice, the class valedictorian, has no desire to wear herself down with a husband and kids. She makes jewel bearings at the plant, a job that barely pays her enough to support her mother and her brother. So it's a family reservation story, Native American story. I grew up in South Dakota, and we mistreated the Native Americans there. We have reservations in South Dakota that have some of the poorest poverty in the nation. But the book is written with a sense of truth, right? And I highly recommend it. It was a slow read. It's a story, and it isn't predicated by a bunch of events that lead you to what's going to happen next, kind of a thing. Just a really interesting story that makes you think The book club, it was good for book club. We talked a lot about different things. So The Night Watchman, I would recommend it. And her other writings if you've never read anything by her. Then I wanted something light and fun, and I was going through my Audible, and right now I have a wish list that's like 17 pages long. And I'm using Libby, but my wish list is still over in Audible, and we didn't close our account because there are just occasionally some books that you can't get on Libby, or like I need it for book club, and so I have to get it right then. So I was scrolling through because I was just looking at 4.5 and 5-star reviews, right? Like, let's do those first, all the really good stuff. And I decided to read Erdrich Starts Over by Linda Holmes. 9 hours and 6 minutes, and it was just lovely. I really like this book. I was telling Amber when we were talking last week that if I have to describe it, I'm going to have to say it's a romance, and I don't typically read romance novels, but there's a man and the woman at the beginning of a story, and so the entire book, you're wondering, right? Are they going to get together? So not a romance in your typical, chest-bearing front cover page, but this is what it's about. In a sleepy seaside town in Maine, recently widowed Evvie Drake rarely leaves her large, painfully empty house nearly a year after her husband's death in a car crash. Everyone in town, even her best friend Andy, thinks grief keeps her locked inside, and Evvie doesn't correct them. Meanwhile, in New York City, Dean Tenney, former Major League pitcher and Andy's childhood best friend, is wrestling with what miserable athletes living out their worst nightmares call the yips. He can't throw straight anymore, and even worse, he can't figure out why. So, Evvie loses her husband. Her best friend is Andy. They live in the same town. Andy's dear friend is this Dean. Dean comes to stay in the town. But it is deeper than that. It's much deeper. It's fleshed out. There's a narrative and there's good dialogue, and they don't just run into each other's arms and fall in love like that, right? He has a past, she has a past. There's a story, there's a history, and you are wondering, right? Like, would they be good for each other? Should they, be together, try to be together? And so really good. My college gymnastics coach, my first year, the woman who recruited me to do gymnastics in college, his name was Evvie Erdman. So I decided, I think, to pick this book because I have a fondness for that name. Anyway, big thumbs up, highly recommend. Kind of in that realm of all the other books where you have Bernadette, Where'd You Go, Bernadette, and with the first name of the character in the title. There are a ton of them out there. You see them all the time. And so I probably might shy away from, that. I'm thinking of, Harold Fry and Queenie and that whole, where you have that first name in the title. It's kind of, we go through these cycles where booksellers figure out what's going to sell, like Girl on the Train, and then we had Girl in the Window and Girl in the, the Dragon Tattoo. We had the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo right first, and then we get into a whole series of books that are similarly titled, so you'll pick them up. But this was just really good, and I would recommend it. And then the last one I just finished this morning is called The Library Book, and it's by Susan Orlean. And I'm going to say I was really glad I read it, glad I finished it, but not as good as The Night Watchman, in the sense that this is basically kind of a nonfiction story, but I think a lot of you might like it. It's based on the Los Angeles Public Library and its history and the fire. So if you have any knowledge of the West part of the United States, you probably would have seen it. It was a national news article, but the fire burned in 1985. Fire burned a huge portion, and they thought it was set by this man, and then they are trying to prosecute him, and it is basically the story of the library, but also of the fire and how they saved the books. And it's very well written in a narrative, but it is a little dry, right? Like, it's not told like a story, and there aren't, well, there are interesting characters because she interviews a ton of librarians, and each chapter starts with several book titles and then their call numbers, and the Dewey Decimal System numbers, and she reads the book, so she reads those out loud. But 2 of the books were knitting books that she reads at the beginning of the chapter, and one of them was Knitting Without Tears with Elizabeth Zimmerman. So that always makes you perk up a little bit, right, when you hear a little knitting in the book you're reading. So yeah, it got really, really great reviews on Audible. Must have been 4.5 or 5 stars, and I picked it up not knowing that it was probably, nonfiction. So, and I might not have read it because I'm just really liking light, airy reads that have high interest right now to keep me focused. But I didn't get several chapters in and say, oh, I don't want to read it anymore, right? So there you go. 3 books for you this week in the audio pile. Let's do a couple of recipes, shall we? I decided to pick breakfast dessert recipes this week. And I think we're going to have this for supper. Breakfast for supper. We don't do that very often. My husband loves big breakfast. He will eat big breakfast, but he doesn't like breakfast for supper. And I don't like breakfast at all, right? Like, okay, I shouldn't say it like that. If I have a choice, if I have a choice and we go out for brunch, I'm going to pick a lunch food almost always. If it's pushing it before brunch, then I'll eat breakfast. And I do like waffles and pancakes, but I'm not a huge fan of eggs. I mean, like, I like eggs, but they're not. Like, some people just love that kind of food and they would do anything for it. And Ross loves sausage and eggs and omelets and bacon, and it's good, but I would often rather have something else. So anyway, because it's going to be Easter next Sunday, I was thinking, what have I made in the past? Usually my parents would come up and we would go for brunch, or they would just come and stay and we would see them in the spring because it's always right around my birthday usually. I mean, Easter can really flux, but you know what I mean. So I picked 2 that I thought. One is one of my favorite things that I have made: French toast, blueberry French toast in a pan. So you take 12 slices of day-old white bread crust, but I usually buy like just a big baguette and leave it out and then chunk it up. 2 packages of cream cheese, a cup of fresh blueberries, 12 eggs, 2 cups of milk, a third a cup of maple syrup or honey. And then you put that all in the pan, and then you cover and you chill it for 8 hours or overnight. So you just put it in your refrigerator overnight. So it's so easy in the morning. So you cut your cream cheese into 1-inch cubes and kind of plop it around, and the blueberries kind of plop around, and then you pour the eggs over the whole thing. And then that bread soaks up all that egg and milk mixture overnight. And just, yeah. Then you make a blueberry sauce. That's what my mother-in-law would call it. May would call it a sauce. Like, she would call rhubarb sauce, peach sauce, pear sauce, whatever, where you just cook down the fruit until you get like a chunky sauce. So you use a cup of sugar, 2 cups of cornstarch, a cup of water, cup of fresh or frozen blueberries, and a tablespoon of butter or margarine. You put that in a saucepan and you just cook it down, cook it down, cook it down. I usually reduce the amount of sugar that I put into stuff like that because the fruit can be so sweet anyway. But the recipe called for a cup. And then you take it out 30 minutes before you want to bake it, and then you bake it at 350 degrees covered for 30 minutes and then uncover it for 30 minutes. It is so good. You serve it like a piece of cake, kind of. You cut it like a piece of cake, but it's French toast, and it's delicious. Really good. So I was thinking that the pan is way too big for Ross and I to have this week, but maybe I'll make it, and then if Kylie heads out this way at some point, I could give them half. Yeah. So And then the second recipe is my sister-in-law Jenny makes this all the time. And I can't make it because I would eat the whole pan. So I just steer away from it. But these are caramel rolls, kind of easy caramel rolls, not homemade from scratch caramel rolls. So I thought it might be a fun one to share with all of you. Put 9 frozen cinnamon rolls in 2 9x13 pans and let rise as per package directions. So you buy in the frozen section those cinnamon rolls and you just, plop those chunks in the pan. Then you mix together 1.5 cups of vanilla ice cream, 1.5 cups of butter, 1 1/3 cups of brown sugar, and 1 1/3 cups of sugar. Okay? We're talking all the sugars, ice cream, cinnamon rolls. And you bring that all to a boiling boil, and then you spread it out over those raised cinnamon rolls, those frozen cinnamon rolls, and then you bake at 350 degrees until golden brown. You can half the recipe, and I do have the halved amounts in here, so if you only want to make half of it, you can certainly do that. But this makes a cinnamon roll in a caramel roll out of a frozen cinnamon roll, and the caramel is to die for. It's so good. It's super sugary, but what is caramel, right? But boiled sugar. So really, really good. We can't have them both this week because I would eat it all. So one or the other, I think I'm going to make for our kind of Easter celebration, since I don't have a little child to buy a Easter basket for or do an Easter egg hunt or anything like that. So that's what I'll do. Let's do some tips and tricks this week. I found a photo on Instagram that I printed out, and I'm going to put it in for all of you to see because Designs by Vanessa on Instagram posted I finally finished my DIY blocking board. What do you think? I will post a blog on everything I did for this project. So I will link all that, but isn't that clever? She took a little board and drilled tiny little holes in it so she can poke literally nails around the outside and block something out to different dimensions. I just thought that was brilliant. And I know some of you have tinkerer husbands who would love to, figure out how to do it or make it. And I took woodworking when I was in college, so I would have the skill set to go in the garage and find a piece of wood and drill little holes in it so that it almost looks like one of those games that you play that you take the little golf tees and move around the little triangle thing. That's what it looks like. It's just in a square so that you can block your swatches easily and quickly and not have to pin them into something. I mean, I have the puzzle pieces, but at my house, I got to get them out. It's kind of a pain. They're up high on the shelf because I got a big stack of them. So I thought I'd share it because it wasn't my idea, but it's kind of a good one, right? Then I had someone ask again in the last couple weeks how I store my shawls. And I know I've shared it on the podcast before, but I'll share it one more time. I lay my shawls the long way, sometimes fold them in half, and then I roll them. They're all rolled. Put the picture up for all of you. I can see on the end which one each is. They don't get wrinkled. They're not wadded up in a ball. Nothing gets pushed to the back of the shelf while other ones come forward because they're just long cylinders, kind of tubes, and that's how I store them. I've seen other people store their shawls that way, and so I just kind of copied what I saw other people doing. And I do have like the little shelving unit in my closet that came with the house. It was just on the wall and it works perfect. I do have to swap out between summer shawls that are smaller and usually more colorful and bright and lacy and my winter shawls, which are bigger. So I swap those out mid-season. Okay, today's shawl is the Stora Dimun shawl. It comes from this book, Folk Shawls by Cheryl Oberle. And if you have been a long time podcast watcher, you know that early on I showed a shawl called the Aran Pocket Shawl, and that one also came out of this book. So if you're looking to find a good big shawl book, this would be a great one to get because there are 2 in there that I really love. And this is a Faroese shawl, and I haven't knit a lot of Faroese shawls, so I'm going to read just a little bit here. Shawls are much embedded in the culture and traditions of these islands as the tale of their naming. Faroese natives claim to have invented shawls, and they remain a beautiful part of everyday garb worn today by young and old over suits, dresses, and jeans. The Faroese shawl is easy to wear because it hugs your shoulders and won't slide off. It can be worn tied behind the back, pinned with a clasp, or simply draped over the shoulders. Some Faroese shawls are lined for warmth, and some are fringed. In my mind's eye, the striking feature of a Faroese shawl is this center back spine. Hoping that you can see that there's a spine that happens right here and goes down. And everything goes off of that center spine, and so the shawl literally goes up and over the shoulder and comes to a complete circle in the front. And so it stays on, and I think they were also known as a working woman shawl because it would be, you could go about your tasks. Now, I made the larger one. There are two in the book. The Stora Dimun is the larger of the two. So this one's quite big and does come down well over my elbows and hang pretty far down. I bought the yarn for mine at Stitches Midwest years ago, say when it was in Minnesota. So some of you that watch from Minnesota and been around a long time, you know that Stitches was held here in Bloomington at one of the big hotels on 100 and 494 back in the day. So I'm gonna say like 2001, right? Or, well, when was this book written? I was wondering if it didn't just come out. Oh yeah, so she signed this book, and it was signed August 25th of 01. So that would have been when I went to, whether or not I knit it right away. In the class that I took with Cheryl, we knit a miniature one. So you could get the shaping and you could get the little center panel all figured out. And so during the class, you knit a miniature one. And then I said I purchased a really nice blue-faced Leicester at the market and immediately cast on my project. People always say, go with a neutral color. It will go with everything. But I don't think tan goes with anything in my closet because I love brights and patterns. So I gave the shawl to Anne, a local dyer, and said, go for it. So my original shawl color was khaki, was just tan. And I didn't wear it. I never wore it because it didn't make a statement. It was this giant shawl and it was just blah to me. It was just a neutral, and I was so disappointed that I'd done all that work and then didn't wear it because it's a heavy shawl too. What is the gauge for this? The gauge is DK or sport weight, but it is knit at 16 stitches to 4 inches on an 8. So it's a big shawl, right? And I sent it home. I remember meeting this woman at Stephen B, and she said at the end of the day, I throw all my dye in a pot and I'll just throw something in there. And I said, as long as it doesn't come back khaki, I don't care, right? Like I don't care what color you throw it in with. I like all colors as long as it's saturated. And it came back this blue, and it does have darker and lighter in it, but it is really quite bright. So, you know, it comes way down, this front piece. It could come way over. You could flip it all the way up and across here, right? That's how large it is. And basically it's garter and yarn over knit 2-togethers. I mean, there is a little bit of a chevron going here, but it's easy to knit, easy to follow, and that garter gives it that stretch. You know how garter is kind of like an accordion or it's almost like ribbing. It just has good, and the shawl has great weight. It really, when you put it on your shoulders, you feel like you're wearing something. It'd be a really good pajama shawl, right? Like you put your pajamas on at night and then you wrap that over your shoulders while you're gonna go sit down on the couch. I used 4 skeins, 412 yards each, and she recommended using Blackberry Ridge Silk Blend Sport Weight, and Blackberry Ridge is kind of local to us, and I'm sure that they were at the Stitches event that year. So she has it done in kind of a variegated, and there are 215 projects. So not a lot of projects, but right, this was pre-Ravelry. So a lot of people didn't go back and put their projects on Ravelry when Ravelry started in 2008, 2009. I wouldn't usually concern myself too much with that project number when the patterns are older than 2008. But yeah, really a great shawl. This is a great book. So if you're looking for just a big, warm wraparound shawl, that's the one I would recommend. It's one of the ones in my stash that I would never think of giving away or putting in a box and not wearing anymore. I just always have it out. I really do like that one. Right. Should we move on to the sweater? Some of you will recognize this, I bet. Lots of people knit this. So this was, I think, the first iteration of the February Bang Out a Sweater hashtag that happened several years ago via Modern Daily Knitting, where they chose a sweater for everyone to knit in the month of February, to try to knit a sweater in a month. That was the goal, was the premise. I did not participate during that time. The pattern came out in September of 2015, and this is the Stopover sweater by Mary Jane Mucklestone, and it is Aran weight, knit out of Lopi yarn, 13 stitches and 4 inches, so a huge gauge on a size 10.5 needle, but I didn't do that. A modern Icelandic style lopapeysa worked at a loose gauge for a deliciously lightweight garment. Stopover is knit entirely in the round with subtle weight shaping inspired by my week-long stopover in Iceland. Patterned in English and also French. The sizes are extra small to 5XL, so it goes from a 32-inch bust to a 64-inch bust. And it has an excellent sizing table and schematic. Sleeves are offered cropped as shown or as traditional long. You can do either one. At the time, the rationale, I think, for part of why Mary Jane designed this sweater in the big yarn on the bigger needles was so that people could get it done faster. And I don't remember who I knit this with at the time, but we said that giant gauge is just going to make this kind of a sloppier sweater than we want it to be, because if you pick the bigger size, because you have a bigger bust, everything can get kind of oversized. And so instead of knitting it on a 10.5, I knit mine on a 9. So my gauge was off, which meant the sweater turned out smaller, which is fine. I, at the time, had lost about 25 pounds. I had gone gluten-free in 2015, and the weight came off, and now it's all come back on. So I didn't do the waist shaping, but you can see that it's fitted enough that it goes in even on my mannequin. And it would have been a snug sweater, a trim fit sweater for me at the time. It is lovely in all the colorways. It is was knit 999 projects on Ravelry, which mean that there's just tons of pictures to look at, and a fun sweater to knit, easy to knit. You just got a little bit of ribbing and then a little bit of color work. However, there are a row or two that have 3 colors in them. Yeah, there are 1 or 2 rows that have 3 colors in them, and that's kind of a pain to carry around. I mean, the yoke is fairly small, but I don't always enjoy. Now, could you swap that out? Absolutely, and just use a 2 color yoke, but I have that in my notes that wasn't super enjoyable to do the 3 color. And I picked kind of that sunset fire colorways, the yellow, orange, and red, but it is knit up in grays and blues and browns and blacks. And on my project page, at the very bottom picture, someone put in their 3 color row, a rainbow of dots right in here. So it went red, orange, yellow, blue, and I don't know how they did it, but it was, if I ever want to knit another one, I took that picture from someone's project page and stuck it on my page. So when I was out there looking at it, I was like, oh, that really was still a cute idea. And I'm guessing that they just knit that 1 stitch and snipped the yarn, and because it's Lopi, it's gonna felt back there, and so you probably wouldn't even have to weave in all those ends. You could just maybe string them under a couple and be done, not weave them in super well. But yeah, the pattern is available for $9 and was the February Bang Out a Sweater hashtag. The other one that I knit that I showed in the Whip Confessions when I did that was my cream one with the red, green, blue, and yellow chevrons at the top where the yarn ran, that red yarn ran. That sweater was called Hadley by Veronik Avery, and I still haven't reknit that yoke that I took back those 2 colors on. So maybe I'll get that out in the next couple weeks and try to, that would literally take me 2 hours to fix that. I ripped it out, I washed the red yarn, it's in the bag, all I have to do is reknit it. Yeah, well, I haven't been doing that much knitting lately, have I? So don't get down on yourself because you can't knit right now, or you haven't knit as much as you think you should. Okay, I just have a couple of notes that I need to share with you this week. I have gotten a couple of requests recently for someone to use my coupon codes that I give out in my newsletter. So if you haven't signed up for my newsletter, go in and do that. There's one coming out again this week, another pattern, but Ravelry will not allow me to let you gift a pattern and use a coupon code. It's not in the system. There is no way for you to gift a pattern and use a coupon code. And then nothing I can do about it. And normally I just tell the person, I said, I'm really sorry, but Ravelry, I can't make it work because it's not there. Like there's no option. It's not like I'm opting in or out of it. It's just not there. And I'm sure it's just another feature that they haven't gotten to that eventually someday they might get to. But so last time, I feel bad when someone wants to gift the pattern and use the discount. And part of me just thinks, just gift the pattern and pay $3 more. And maybe that's, terrible of me to think, but that part of me is that way. And then the other part of me is like, well, the reason that they want to gift it is because it's on sale, Corey. They want to gift it to their friend because it's on sale. So I let this person send me $3 via PayPal, and then I just gifted the person the pattern. And it worked fine, right? She just sent me money, not for anything, just sent me money on PayPal. And then I went into Ravelry because I can gift patterns to anyone. That's a feature. So I just thought I'd put it out there that if you have always, if you wanted to gift someone to something and there was a coupon code and you thought the designer was not allowing you to use it, it isn't a designer issue. It's a Ravelry thing, okay? The knitting exchange is up and running. Can you believe it? After last week and me putting out the video and putting up, so there is a group on Ravelry you can join called the Knitting Exchange, and you can go in there and look at the projects that people are posting, and we've had a bunch of projects posted. There are sweaters and shawls, and there's a felted bag and a cardigan and a pair of socks, and people are saying, I don't want to finish this, or I finished this and I never wear it. There's a sweater out there that I should have because it's orange, but it's never been worn, and it's a size 52 bust. It's darling. So I also started an Instagram, Knitting Exchange, and you can go over to Knitting Exchange, type it in Instagram, and follow that group. And as people allow, I am taking pictures of what they've posted on Ravelry and putting them up on Instagram so that it would come through your feed occasionally and you might see it if something was for sale. What people are doing is they're marking things paid, taken, or sold on the items that are gone. So when you scroll down, you have to look, and mostly they're putting them in big capital letters, either at the top or the bottom of their post, so that you know that it's already been taken, and a lot of things have been taken. But if you have something in a bag that you would like to get rid of, or give to someone, or sell to someone, or swap yarn with for someone, go over to the Knitting Exchange at Ravelry and post it. If you're not on Ravelry, then you can send me an email and I will post it on Instagram as well as on Ravelry. And then I will need a contact information for you for, how that person could get in touch with you. But it's working. Like, I'm so tickled that there are projects going out into the world that would otherwise have been unloved. And people are charging just reasonable amounts, I think. There's nothing that I think is just extraordinarily exorbitant. Nobody's trying to, get a ton of money for their hand knit items. They're just like, hey, someone else would like this. Someone might wear it. Someone might want to finish that. There's a shawl in there that had just gotten started. There's just like this much of it done. And she's like, this just isn't for me. And the yarn was beautiful yarn. Maybe La Bien-Aimée yarn. Yeah. And so she put it out there. I'm just tickled. that an idea that I had for something, I do think that it could blow up. I am struggling right now to keep up with everything I have to do. I've kind of overcommitted on some design work that I want to get done. And then I have designs like for people. But then I have designs of my own that I want to work on. And then I have a new book idea. And so I'm trying to move all those things forward at once. And so I don't always get to Ravelry every day to double check that the knit exchange is going well. And then I had some messages on Instagram that I completely missed. I typed in a message on Instagram and didn't hit send to someone this week. So, bear with me. I'm just trying to kind of keep my life in order, not doing the best job at all times. I'll just stick a little reminder in here too that the iRock Knitters hashtag is still being used on Instagram, and we're over 500 posts. So you can go out and see what other knitters that watch my podcast are working on, what they're knitting, and they're posting over there, so that you can follow other people that are generally like-minded as far as like watching podcasts and knitting goes, which is kind of fun. So go and check out that hashtag. I do think that for a while there, YouTube had not been offering closed captioning. You had to go in and do some funky things in the background in order to get closed captioning to happen. But now it seems to me that I'm not having to do that anymore, and the closed captioning is coming up. It doesn't happen immediately, but within a few days. So will any of you who use closed captioning exclusively let me know if there's ever a video out there that doesn't have captioning available? Because I try to remember to check, but it doesn't go up right away. So then if I don't get back to look, and it doesn't seem to have the CC underneath my video in the editing part. It's just that the captioning's already there. Like I go over and look and I'm like, well, wait a second, captioning's on this one. Why is it not saying CC in my editing to make it happen? And I think it's because maybe YouTube got enough flack that they decided that they really needed to try to stay accessible. And in that vein, if you did not know, Ravelry is offering dark mode on their computer screen. So everything March 31st goes away on Ravelry, the old version. If you had toggled back and were still under your name over in the right-hand corner, you click on it and you drop all the way to the bottom, there was an option to use the old version of Ravelry until March 31st. And then it, partly that was because it seemed like the new version was inaccessible to people with visual issues, migraine, seizure disorder, all those kinds of things. And now I saw this last week or so that they have offered a dark mode, which would mean your background is completely black and your letters are white, which can help some people with visual distortion. And then there's like a light version of the new design. So let's say the new design is orange and raspberry. The light version is like pink and soft purple, right? Like it's toned down. I don't know that helps everyone, and I don't know that they were very responsive in saying, we will fix this for you that can't use it. But I did see that happened. So I wanted to kind of make that known to you, that if you don't like the bright white background of Ravelry, you can just toggle down back and forth on that. Okay? I have a CORI'S stories for you this week, and I think it's going to touch your heart. Do you remember 2 weeks ago when I told the story about my mom being orphaned at 2 weeks old? Her mom died of pneumonia after giving birth to my mom, and then my grandfather raised my mom for 2 years before he married my Grandma Winnie. It's the only grandma I ever knew. And then my Grandma Winnie's mother, Grandma Elsie, is the one who had the quote, and my mom shared bedroom with her whole life, and then eventually the two great grandma and grandma didn't get along as they moved forward. So because they lived together for very, very, very many years, so then eventually my mom and dad helped great grandma Elsie move out into an apartment that I always remember visiting. And so I got a message in the comments that week, and I was so touched by this story I wanted to share. And I'm not going to share the full name of the person, but Anne is, she'll know who she is. And this is what this message said. My guardian angel chose this podcast episode for me to watch as my first. since losing my precious mother a few days ago. My mother was orphaned at age 2 and was raised by grandparents and a few aunties here and there. So you can appreciate that the history you shared of Great-Grandma Elsie Handy had some similarities to that of my mom. The quote is just how my mom went about life. It was like a tribute to my mom, and I so appreciated watching. I'm expecting a new grandchild, a baby girl, in June, and her name will be Elsie, I was told. As always, I love the content of your podcasts, just so relaxing and entertaining. Is that just not a moment? My husband said the other day, I know you get tired of podcasting and getting everything ready, because I complain sometimes when I'm trying to get everything ready. And he said, but you got to think of it as, your ministry. And in that moment, my story about my mom that I thought was inappropriate or not worth telling because I want to have knitting stories and I don't have knitting stories right now, which is what I talked about last week. But, Anne, I'm so sorry you lost your mother. I can't imagine that pain if you're close to your mother and you lose her. But then the fact that you are going to have a new grandbaby in your life. And I called my mom immediately when I got this comment and said, Grandma Elsie is going to have a namesake, which is not really true, right? And I have told you guys the story of Grandma May's namesake, right? So as much as we are all not connected right now, and I've not given you all your hug today, so come in for your hug. Do you feel my love for each of you? Because we have to love one another, right? Because we can't see one another. And I don't want to have a 60th birthday without a party. I want to have all the knitters come. And I want to have chocolate cake and ice cream and tacos for lunch and donuts for breakfast. And pizza and pasta for supper. Can my whole day revolve around food? That's all it's revolved around this entire quarantine, can I just say? I started intermittent fasting. And because I don't find it hard to skip a meal. I can skip breakfast pretty easily, or I could skip supper. Because eating twice a day would be plenty for me. It's the amount of food I want to eat when I sit down to eat, and then my snacking that was just killing me. And we were buying all the candy and all the snacks, and I'm a sweet tooth, and the Girl Scout cookies came and went, and I ate a whole box, within a few days, and I just decided that I have to put a stop to this. And so, if you don't know anything about intermittent fasting, you can look it up on the internet. But I just needed to reduce my calorie intake. And so for me, that's all it is. I'm skipping my breakfast and I'm eating my meals only between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m., right? I'm just going to limit the amount of time I eat. And then from 7 p.m. at night until 1 p.m. the next day, I'm not eating. I don't need to eat. I can have water. That's it. Or Diet Coke, which is not in the spirit of the program, but don't get down on me because caffeine when you're not sleeping. I need it, and I don't drink coffee. So I have number of people in my life who have had success with kind of doing that and not putting other restrictions on. It's not about giving up this and that and not eating this or that and weighing your food and counting your calories and doing your macros and all that. Like, I've been there, done that. I'm a Weight Watchers Lifetime member. I did Slimgenics. I did a weight loss program in Virginia, and I don't even remember the name of it, but I bought bars and food and not food. I bought like supplemental bars and things, and I went and weighed in once a week or whatever. Ever since I left gymnastics when I was 22 years old, I have had an issue because I weighed in my entire life, right? From the time I started gymnastics until the time I left it, I was weighed in by a coach, sometimes in the morning and the afternoon, sometimes twice a week. And so there's just a big defiant part of me that is like, I will eat what I want when I want, Darn it. And I guess you would call that an eating disorder, right? Where you had disordered eating when you were younger. You scheduled everything, and I'm kind of obsessive compulsive about thinking about food, and I do think that that's a part of it. But I am going to be on this weight loss kind of regimen and journey so that I can feel healthier, because I started getting concerned about my knees and my foot when they weren't working well. And carrying 25, 35, 40 extra pounds on a small frame is not good for your joints. And if I'm going to have arthritis, I need to kind of take care of this. And I used the quarantine as an excuse, and 3 surgeries, and as an excuse to eat whatever I wanted in the chair every night. So, and after supper, I would just graze until I'd go to the kitchen, and I'd get a pop, and then I'd go back, sit down, and I'd always have something to eat with it. And it just bad habits, bad ideas. So I am on this bit of a journey, and I thought, what better place than to share it with all of you and be able to say, hey, there are days when I might need a little support in this, and a little bit of stick to it spirit, right? And you can do it. And hey, it's not so bad to not have, red licorice and a candy bar and milk duds and whatever, right? I just had it all. I was just eating it all. Or a donut, or a piece of cake, or whatever. It really was ridiculous. I felt I didn't have something in the morning, 4 o'clock when I got tired, and something in the evening. So I can take care of this. But I have done a lot of programs, and some worked well for me, and I kind of cycle like this. I'll have a time where I'm pretty trim and feel better, and my body, bottom half of my body doesn't hurt as much. And then I will cycle back up because I felt better. So I'm gonna take care of this little part of it. And it's not that I don't love myself or my body or whatever. I do, like, it's all good, right? Like, I got a belly right now that I'm not very happy with, and I don't want my clothes to stop fitting. I would really like to wear jeans again once we come out of quarantine. All right, there anybody else out there like that, where you're not wearing a real bra and you're not wearing jeans because you never go anywhere, and so you're just like, why would I put that on? That was probably part of the bad idea, right? If I would have worn them, I would have realized how tight they were getting. Oh well. And I hope that we're going to get out of this, right? I hope we're going to move forward and get out of this. Okay, enough of that chat. Okay, let's talk about a new pattern release that's happening as this goes live. This will be quick because this is a remake of a former pattern, but I'm just going to show it real quick to all of you. This is my kite tail shawl. So it looks like a kite, goes like this, goes like this. It's got these center triangles in it as you go up. See the triangle piece? And then across the top it has a little I-cord with loops all the way across. And then you could take that tail and you can weave it in and out of all the loops or one of the loops, or you can tie it off on one of the loops. So there are multiple wearing possibilities. You can just pull it through there. And the shawl never received a whole ton of love. It was a kit that I designed with Sun Valley Fibers and kitchen counter crafter Jenny for ZK 1 year. So it was a limited release, right? They had so many kits to sell at ZK. You could pick them up there. And then the pattern just kind of sat there, right? It just sat there. And I always kind of liked this idea that the pattern had, these loops, and you could wear it different ways. It could be a shawl, it could be a scarf, it could be a cowl. You can fold it in half like this and then stick that tail through and have it be up around your neck. So I decided, gosh, I don't know, a year ago, that I wanted to add an additional size. And so I was going to have it knit up in worsted weight, and then I was just going to tell people, hey, you can knit it in worsted, and here's a picture of it in worsted. But this was about the time I was having hand trouble and I couldn't knit it, so I asked a sample knitter Jean to knit it for me in worsted weight. And Jean is technically really a good knitter. And so she was getting in touch and saying things like, do you want me to continue to have the same amount of space between this section and that section? Is the repeats are going to make this get longer over a short period of time? Do you want to increase the rate of increases? And so it did change like a lot, the pattern, to make it look, the proportions. So I released the kite tail shawl in worsted weight on Tuesday when this goes live, but the pattern is still the same pattern on Ravelry. You just get both versions, and if you purchased it before, you will have received the download of the new version. So it'll just have a fingering weight one to check out, to print, or a worsted weight one. But this is the new version. I did it in kind of a purpley blue colorway with a purple skein for the tail. Your tail and your they could certainly match. That would not be a problem for this to not have this purple edge. So there are new pictures up, and I used Sun Valley yarn again, and this is the speckle colorway number 9, I believe, and then this purple is like purple passion or something, but it still has the loops in it, and so you can double it over, you can wear it multiple ways, you can just wrap it around your shoulders. That hurt my shoulder. Yeah, so there you go. So the new kite tail worsted weight shawl is out on Ravelry. There was a coupon code that went out in my newsletter. The coupon code is good through next Saturday. If perhaps you didn't get the newsletter, but you went and looked at the project page on Ravelry, you could maybe find that code to help you out a little bit. Because it was one that I already had published, I want to get a few more people to have their eyes on it. It always helps if you go to Ravelry and put it in your queue, or favorite it, or like it, or purchase it. All those things help move a pattern up to the front page of Ravelry, and that's always every designer's goal, is to get up to that front page, because then tons more eyes get on something that you've spent your time and energy doing. So the kite tail shawl will be up now for anybody to go look at, and it's got just 2 files in it. I have one more little thing to show this week. I finished this little cowl. This is the bandana cowl by Pearl Soho. I had purchased this yarn when I went to New York City at String, the day I met Stacy Charles, who owned that yarn store at that time. It's now been purchased by Webb's. But when I did the great purge of March 2021 and had a mess on my dining room table trying to find that skein of yarn and couldn't put everything away, what I ended up with at the end was kind of like 8 or 10 skeins of like already wound yarn that I hadn't used, that probably I was going to make a project into, but I didn't know what to do with it. And 2 of the skeins were this yarn that I had purchased that were on like a cardboard skein holder, and this is cotton cashmere. And I thought, you always wanted to try that to see how it felt, if it was going to be like super amazingly soft and drapey. And I would say no, it's not super amazingly soft and drapey. But this little cowl from Pearl Soho is made for bulky weight yarn, and this was more like a DK. This is String Yarns. I think it's called Breeze, the color, the yarn. So I had to kind of revamp the pattern because it had short rows to shape the front. Super easy to knit, right? You just cast on, and then I thought I would stripe the whole thing. I thought, well, I'll just make it pink and gray striped because that'll be super cute, 2 stripe rows. And then I got going on it, and when you get up to a certain point, you realize it has short rows, which are kind of pain to do. Stripes with short rows when you don't go all the way around to the back, and I didn't really want to figure it out, and I was just knitting this late at night last weekend, kind of just wanting to get it off the needles. I knew it wouldn't take me long. So it turned out really cute, but it isn't it isn't what it was meant to be. It should be a little bit bigger cowl. It should be a little taller and a little more drapey. The yarn was fine to work with. I would say it feels more like a cotton than a cashmere, but I thought it would show because this is a cute pattern, and all of Pearl Soho's patterns are free. So there you go. Let's say hello to a few folks. Donna Denham, who understands glasses and has said, you know, you got to pick what you got to pick, and if you got to pay more money for them, you're gonna, you know, you got to be happy with them. You got to wear them every single day. Brandi Stoker, Elinar Lowry, Judith Muscroft, who talked about the stickers. Remember I shared the stickers last time, and she had bought that little packet of stickers, that I Love Knitting stickers at Amazon. Danielle Brown and Kat Gore and Rachel Weissenstein, who talked about the Lost Words book that I shared on the last podcast. A couple of you chimed in. That's another podcaster had talked about the book, and I have since seen that podcast where she talked about it too. But yeah, and I know a couple of you went out and purchased the book right away to have for grandchildren or at your own house. It's a beautiful coffee table book. Candee Harris and Suzanne Selby, Beraria, Terry Monk, Kelly Mathern, who got a new puppy. Kelly, oh my gosh, she got a new puppy. Anyway, so cute. It's a duck, what is it? Tolling duck tolling dog. Little fluff ball is what it is. Super cute. Olivia Mankey. Olivia told me that she listened to the book Ghosts of Cold Mountain, which I didn't love, but I read for book club, and I was glad I read it. But she said the description that I gave helped her to read it, and she loved it. And so I was, you know, sometimes I feel bad when I don't love every single book that I talk about, because I think, well, why would you talk about it if you're going to say, hey, this wasn't for me or whatever. But I think that's exactly it, right? Some of you are going to hear that library book that I just finished, and you're going to say that the history of libraries and librarians and a fire at a library is for me. I will love reading that and learning about the Los Angeles public library system, right? So I thank you for that, Olivia, because your comment helped me to say you can talk about all the books that you listen to. Okay, Stephanie Haberman, Janet Robertson, Peggy Bork, Elle Friedman, Margarita Deverson, Kathy Shemine. Kathy, you read Anxious People and loved it, which that's going to be at the top of my list at the end of the year, I think. That Frederick Bachman book, oh, that was so good. Victoria Pileski, Pat Howes, Heather Wilson, Elle LeBlanc, Crochet Creations by Christy, Kathy Goodman, Jesse's Mom 12, Kathy B, the 3-Ply Podcast ladies. Hi, ladies. Karen Mezzacapo, Emma Butcher, Janet Holler, Patty Skaggs, Liza Kingston Coleman, who had she lives in Ireland, and she had St. Patrick's Day off, which was really fun. Susie Fab, Rachel Dobson, Christine Carr, Donna Bauman, Mary Case, Hawthorne Cottage Craft, Pat Kohler, Glenda Bathgate, Angela Jenkins, Georgia, Lisa Smith, and Cheryl-lacemaker.